Welcome to the third of what looks to be 5 videos on the 70s Rockola refurbishing and bringing back to life these machines, 453 to 474 in particular. We've already covered the mechanism and the cleaning and the adjustments needed. This video will go over the selection system, which includes the credit unit, the keyboard, the selection control panel, and the power supply. So let's get started. Okay, first the credit unit. Now this sits on the back door of most of these models. It may be located elsewhere. Note that there is a credit switch here, so if you want to keep it on coin and don't feel like popping coins in, you can simply give yourself some credit here, 4, 5, 10 credits, which is what I usually do. And that should have resulted in the make selection light appear when your box is plugged in. By the way, we have not plugged in the box yet. We're still checking individual components, and I think that's the proper way to go. Okay, well, this will open up, and we'll take a look at the inside. We should be able to move pretty quickly through this. Really, you have your credit wheel here, and then this is your debit coil. This is the ADR relay here. Now, this is very important. There are 4 contacts there, and I must say that those must be cleaned thoroughly, because even if the relay is not actuated, if it's in the rest position or closed position, those contacts still carry current to operate a lot of other functions. So it's a very important relay, and I only mention the ADR relay there. 4 sets of contacts. Be sure they are cleaned. Now, I usually clean them with a small piece of 600 sandpaper and pickups, put some CRC on it, and rub it back and forth under the contacts. You can also use a small file. It doesn't matter. Now, also, there's a 1/4. We're going to start to talk about fuses now, and obviously, if you're in here, there's a 1/4 amp slow blow fuse right there. Be sure that's not blown, and if it is blown, then you better look at the contacts and check some components. But this has normally been fairly trouble-free. Last thing I want to say, and we're going to move on. You see that? This is your cancel solenoid here. As it cancels, as a selection is made, you'll get a cancel. Now, if you want to put it on free play, you can take out that spring. It's right there. I hope you can see it. You just pull down on that bar with a spring around it and remove it. Now, when you do that, put it in a safe place so you don't lose it. But that will allow the cancel solenoid to still go through its motion with the actuating this micro switch down here. You have to be sure it still does that. You see the micro switch activating? So if you take out the spring, that still does its thing and activates all the subsequent processes, but it doesn't cancel any selection because the bar has been removed. And that will result in free play. Remember, again, be sure you put some credits on before you do that, and that is done by pushing this lever here. Okay, I think that's about enough for the credit unit. Put it back in, clean all the contacts in there, as we said, and it should be good to go. Next up is the keyboard, and I took one out of a junker machine here so you could see it a little more readily. I had to scavenge a part off the other side here, but basically there's a set of contacts over here on the right which need to be cleaned. There's a micro switch here that activates on the second of the 3rd digits, and then this is the key switch here. This blade switch will be the one that will start the search or write-in motor in process. So all 3 of these, I'm sorry, actually there's only 2. There's the blade switches here need to be cleaned, and the blade switch here needs to be cleaned. Now let me say just one thing about this. There is an adjustment here because sometime one of my boxes, this switch should only make after the third button, third digit is, so if you're pressing 110, after you press the 0, that's when this one should make. And then a couple times I had this actually making contact after the second digit, and that was really fouling up the write-in process. So when you get your box plugged in and make some selections, you can actually see this, these relays, these switches making and breaking when you push the buttons. And just be sure that this blade switch here only makes after the third digit is pressed. And if that's the case, that would be good. And this one will open at that time. These two should not be closed at the same time. I hope I made that clear. And then the other thing, of course, is to get each one of these push button switches. There's 10. Every one of them needs to be clean. Now, let's go in and look. You see what's happening here? They're coming down and making. They have to make there at the bottom. So you have to spray these with CRC, each one of them, and press it at least 10 times too. And then this one the same. It's a little tougher to get the ones under the solenoid, but again, go all the way across. And then, then you can, this of course will be in the box, but you can still access this well enough without removing it to accomplish what we just did here. You may have to remove the fluorescent light on the top with the 454, 460 to get at these contacts more easily. Okay, that's it for the keyboard. Next we go to the selection control panel. This also sits on the back door, although its location could be different in some of the other models. This surprisingly, despite having a rather complex circuit board, has not given too much problem. These components have been quite resilient over the years, and they're subject to low current and voltage. So, but I do need everyone to at least open this up. And again, at the very least, you want to be sure that the fuses are correct. Now, this one is missing a fuse, but these are all 1 amp fuses, and this principle is basically electronics 101. Be sure the fuses that are in there are correct. Sometimes people have put funny stuff in there. These are all 1 amp quick blow fuses, regular fuses. Be sure that is correct. Now your up here is a whole panel of silicone control rectifiers, diodes, all to facilitate the selection process. First digit light comes on when you through this circuit. Down here are the 2 relays, K6 and K7. A lot of this is in your manual, and you can see what they do through the diagrams that are enclosed in the manual. I don't generally open up enclosed relays and clean the contacts, because I've found that most of the time the contacts stay fairly clean in relays that have a case on them. But if you have a selection problem, yes, you're going to have to take the containers apart here and clean the contacts and check current. But only thing I did with this, besides check the fuses, I did remove the gang contacts on the side and sprayed CRC in there, and then I also took the board out. I hope I can get it here. There's a I can't seem to get it out now, but there's just a whole group of contacts on the back of this that you should clean if you can, and that would help. Here it comes. All right, so this is it. It comes right out, and there they are on the side. Please clean those with with CRC and fine sandpaper on both sides. This circuit board, as you can see, looks to be in good condition. You want to at least look at it to be sure there's no burnout elements, but as I said, these are pretty much maintenance free. This then gets put back in with the two contacts. Okay, that's it for the selection control panel. Next in line is the power supply. This is on the back door. It's a heavy unit. It takes the 120 volts from the wall and then steps it down to 30 volt DC through a rectifier and 25 volt AC through a step down transformer. There are plugs for the fluorescent lights that still would take 110 or 120 volts, and there's also should be one here for the turntable motor, which also takes 120 volts, so they aren't stepped down. Now the first thing you do is go over and check the main fuse. This is a 5 amp fuse. Be sure that's what's in there and that it still is good. Fortunately, if that fuse is blown, the most common reason would be a shorted fluorescent light ballast, and that's one of the reasons we haven't turned on this box yet, because we haven't checked the fluorescent light ballast, and we will talk about that soon. But this is just electronics 101. Check fuses. Okay, now go over here and you have 3 circuit breakers for the mechanism, selection system, and 25 volt power. Now notice that one of the circuit breakers has been replaced by a fuse, and that is acceptable as long as you get the right fuse. And this one probably should be 1.4 or 1.5 amp. But as far as the circuit breakers go, you want to be sure they're still working. So if you test across the 2 leads there, take these covers off, you should get some resistance of the circuit. And then when you press the button, it should open up. And if that does not happen, then you're going to have to replace that circuit breaker. These relays are all described in the manual. I won't go into that any further, but I do want to show the inside of this. This is the first time now we're going to plug in our soldering gun and get busy. There are 3 capacitors in here that are high voltage power capacitors that should be replaced if you're going to keep the box. And they are a 1500 microfarad capacitor here, a 100 microfarad capacitor here, and a 100 microfarad capacitor here. And they should be rated at 100 volts. Do that. Replace them. Be sure you get the right polarity. Again, there's a host of fuses inside here I want you to be aware of. If they're blown, then you've got to determine why, because that could be inside here. That could be a diode over here that went bad, and you'd have to check the continuity of the diodes with the diode checker. I don't think you have to do that. If everything looks good and no fuses are blown, you're probably okay by just checking the circuit breakers, replacing those 3 capacitors, and then I also check this current limiting bulb. All you have to do is take it out and check continuity. If the coil shows some resistance, it can be from anywhere from 4 ohms up to 20 ohms. That's fine. All you want to really be sure is that the bulb isn't burned out, in which case the filament will be open and you'll get an open circuit. Okay, I think that's about it for the power supply. Fuses are important, the circuit breakers are important, and replacing the 3 capacitors, checking the current limiting bulb. I think that's sufficient. There aren't really any contacts to clean here. Okay, that's it for the selection system review. We'll go on now to the 4th video, which will cover the fluorescent lights and the amplifier and speakers. Thank you.